sleeps in every day.
For real though, we carry baby wipes in the truck.
Oh my God. I was like,
Pop the spot. Okay.
are we live?
Yes.
Who's going to introduce him? Oh, me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. Oh, no one's in here yet.
Oh, we can just be silly then.
Yeah, we can be silly. But no, my butt cheeks were cold. I felt like Bambi. I was like, my toes are cold and my nose is cold. I was so cold. And then my friend from Germany, when I said, okay, we're going to go out in the middle of ass funk nowhere, we'll stay in some cabins. I won this trip. And she's like, we lived in Germany. This is good. We know what cold is. And I was like, no, I think we need to bring some extra blankets. She's like, no, we got this. I was like, I don't know. Man, we got there and it was good in the day. And then like that nighttime hit and she was like, what the fuck's going on? It's cold. I was like, I told you it was going to be cold. She was so mad. She started getting grumpy. We were so cold. I was like,
where was it at? Where did they have it at?
In Aquaquan.
Oh,
close. No, it's Quantico.
Well, Quantico, sorry. Quantico.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, there's a national park right next to the Marine Corps base.
Yeah, it would be cold.
I was cold.
Sounds like an experience, though. I mean, really.
It was. I met Selena Fox. That's the one year I went and I met Selena Fox.
I've heard her name before. What exactly does she do? Because I've heard her name a couple of different times.
Well, she's kind of like a legend in a way, I guess. Well, for us, I mean, like for pagans, she's kind of epic because she paved the way for so many people, and she was talking about the death threats she was getting at the time for her too.
Wasn't she the one that got the Wiccan symbol put on the headstones, the gravestones?
One of the folks, yeah.
Okay.
She was in on that. She and her husband are the founders of Circle Sanctuary out in Wisconsin.
That's what it's called, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's adorable.
She looks like a woman from Lord of the Rings, though. She does. You know it's true. She does. She looks like she fits into Lord of the Rings.
Now I have to Google. Now I have to Google and do research.
But she's really sweet. She's really, really sweet. And I remember I went there and I got my tarot card. And I don't like the Rider-Waite, so it didn't look like my tarot card, right? And I was like, she was like, this is what this means. I was like, are you sure? Because this looks like a bad omen. She's like, it's not a bad omen. The lady that was passing out tarot cards, not Selena. I was like, this is looking kind of ominous. And she was like, next. I was like, oh, okay.
She sounds fun.
It was fun. But I mean, it was a good time. It was a good experience. I can't say it's not memorable because it definitely was. It was definitely memorable because it was me and my friend's first time, and then they were like they did a mugwort tea thing, and then they put ashes? What did you guys put on our forehead?
I think it was probably ashes. Yeah,
ashes. And so I was like, my friend did not want to be out there by herself. And she's like, you have to take me right after her because I'm very nervous being out here by myself. Man, they took me back. Like, I guess I just disappeared, but I thought she was right behind me and she wasn't. It was like 30 minutes waiting for her to get in. She's like, where'd you go? I was like, they took me. They just took me, okay? I don't know. She was like, I was just out there freaking out, thinking maybe you died. And I was like, what are these people going to give me this tea so I can go in? I guess it's crazy. I was cold. And I was like, it was fine. It was good though.
It wouldn't be a spiritual journey if there wasn't a little bit of confusion attached to it. It would not.
That was the first time I met Frank. I was like, this dude's huge. That's a big dude. And he was talking about Frank is huge.
Really? Like physically? How tall are you, Frank?
He's like a bear.
Oh. Okay.
Wait, 6 what?
6'2".
But he's like
He's tall. He's tall and stocky.
And he has the best hugs, though.
Oh, he looks like it.
The best hugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you first started talking about him on the Collegium, I was like, Frank. And sometimes you hear about people, but you never put a face to a name, because I heard people talk about him before. And then when I saw it, I was like, okay, yeah, I've seen him before. But he always gives off this look that he's really nice and approachable. And I remember seeing that with his energy. He does. He looks really nice and approachable.
But he's also very scary. If you make him mad, you're just like, just run a little bit faster.
Well, he deals with a lot of serious stuff, I'm sure. Frank, what do you feel about soul retrievals?
I have not done soul retrieval work. However, I find it fascinating, and I have been present for soul retrieval work, basically doing protection around the participants while it was going on.
I have a client, and one of her therapists, my client is my therapist, but she has a therapist that shares space with her, and she's a shaman.
Oh, cool.
And so we were talking about, hey, babe. We were talking about soul retrieval, because she was telling me just in the hallway one day, she said there's something that was closed off that we need to open up. And I was like, okay, who are you? What are you talking about? And she goes, I just feel like every time I see you, there's something that's closed off. So she's like, we need to do a soul retrieval. So I've always been a little bit like, okay, what exactly are you opening up? You know, that fear of it. So I always wondered about it.
It is definitely hardcore shamanism. I will tell you that right now.
Like it.
It's hardcore stuff. It's not something that your dilettante shamans should try. For those who are properly trained and properly prepared, it is an extremely potent and useful type of therapy. It is incredible. It is life-changing. And seriously, I have so much respect and admiration for folks who are following a proper shaman path, because it is easy. It really tears you apart in the process. I mean, any good spiritual path is going to challenge you and leave you a weeping mess from time to time.
Absolutely.
But the shaman path specifically is very, very visceral. And I mean, really, most any spiritual path we have today ultimately can trace its roots to shamanism. It's just more refined practices. But man, those folks, props.
Yeah.
There are some things that are best left alone. Like with the soul retrieval, like say something was so traumatic that you blocked it out.
Well, when you have situations like that, like when you have a blocking, and I think it was Oz I talked to about this. He said you still have to retrieve that piece of the soul, because then that's a part that continues to repeat and cycle through. So when they start retrieving that piece of your soul, they don't just retrieve it like, here, you work through it yourself. They actually do it in steps and help you work through the trauma.
Because something happened to me when I was 4, and I know what happened because other people have told me, but as far as do I remember it? No. And to be honest, I'd rather just leave it that way. I know what happened. I don't need to relive it over.
Well, the thing to keep in mind with soul retrieval or any really deep-reaching spiritual therapy is it should never be done by itself. It should always be done in conjunction with conventional therapy. And that's actually one of the things that drives me nuts about the pagan and the magical community in general, is this idea that, oh, we are spiritual, therefore we do not deal with the medical establishment or the psychological establishment. And that is fucking bullshit. They are complementary. They are complementary. You need to work together with them. And thankfully, there are more and more therapists out there, properly trained, properly licensed, who are, if not actual practitioners of these spiritual paths, are friendly to them and willing to work with people who are on them.
That's what my therapist did.
Mine is too, and I think I was blessed to find her because I didn't set out to look for that connection at the time. I think I was going through a divorce, and I just needed somebody to help me deal with the pain. And it was amazing because within that pain, my spirituality started to emerge, and it was very confusing for me. And she helped me navigate it. In a spiritual sense and also within a very therapeutic and professional atmosphere. So I agree with you, Frank. I think a lot of times, even as spiritualists, I get a ton of people in my inbox daily. I wake up to like 20, 30 messages where people are like, help me, please help me, help me, help me, help me. And they want a reading or they want healing. And I'm like, okay, have you gone to therapy? Have you talked to someone? Have you talked to family members? And they don't want to do it. You know, they want you to give them some magic potion to drink, or they want you to snap their fingers and everything is going to be okay. But we have to be realistic.
Well, the other part, though, is we live in this microwave society where people really don't want to do the shadow work. Even, I mean, they just don't, or they don't want to do work at all to better themselves. It's like people who they're like, we don't want to work out, so we're going to get the gastric bypass surgery, even though they may not be that large, and say, because it's easier.
Yeah.
But the truth is that comes with its own sets of problems as well. So,
true.
So anytime you don't want to go all the way full circle, something gets left behind and you end up having to go back anyway.
Well, you see it with a lot of celebrities and a lot of people, like you say, that change their nose, they change their hair, they change their body, but they look in the mirror and they still hate themselves.
Yep.
So that's something inner that you have to go deeper into and fix. And when you talk about healing, a lot of people, they don't equate that with the outside. It's almost like if the outside is pretty and it looks nice, then I'm good. Mm-hmm. But you still have all this gunk that still needs to be cleared out because you're still making the same decisions. You're still dealing with the same pain.
It is painful.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You need to go ahead, introduce Frank, because we need to talk about what he does and what he's going to bring to the Collegium. Because we can sit up here and talk for an hour.
Yeah, I was like, do we have anybody yet? But I reposted it on the page too. But hi, Frank. Hi, Frank. I know who you are. Frank Stormcatcher, our local neighborhood Ghostbuster and savior. That is what you do for us at Sticks and Stones and Guardian. I mean, that's how I introduced you because that's how you were introduced to me in a way. But I know you also as my friend, and I know you also as the protector of our mutual friends and the store that we work at. And you will be teaching magical ethics at the Collegium. At least that'll be one of the parts of your teaching. Yes. So if you will introduce yourself to everyone else. I know Lynna does not know you. She's like, I don't know Frank. It's like, what? So yes, if you'll introduce yourself again, please tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Frank Stormcatcher. I'm a friend of Shishi's. And that sums it up.
Well, he must be okay.
Well, as far as friends of Shishi go, I mean, we have to be honest about this.
Right.
True.
Okay, so where to start? Well, my practice is based mostly around protection. The term that I use for what I do is guardian, but there are various other terms that people in other parts of the country or in different religious traditions will use. And basically what I and these folks do is we specialize in securing and holding sacred or protected space for others so they can accomplish what they need to do without distraction. This is both physical and metaphysical. Sometimes we are there strictly to worry about any spiritual entities coming in. Other times, depending on the location, we're watching doors and we're acting as ID checkers, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It just depends on the context and what needs to be done. outside of events, my practice deals a lot with house clearings, house blessings, and on rare occasions, exorcisms. I've performed 5 full exorcisms. I hope I never have to do a 6th. Yeah, but most of what I've encountered, it's still early stages. But those 5 were when something was in there and had a really strong hold, and it took a bit to get them out. Thus, I hope I never have to do a 6th. But outside of that, which really is my spirituality as such, I would probably be best described as a heathen or heathen adjacent. I'm most comfortable dealing with those deities and a few deities from the Celtic realms as well, but mostly the Norse deities. And teaching-wise, I like to teach basic protection courses for folks, introductory level type stuff. Like, these are the things that you can do around the house. Magical ethics, of course. I'll probably be focusing on that a little more with the Collegium because several of our esteemed faculty also have various protection traditions that they're planning on teaching, and there's really no sense in reinventing the wheel when you've already got a beautiful selection to go with already. But I'll also be hopefully discussing things along the lines of how to learn in these processes. One thing I've been practicing for, oh good Lord, nearly 30 years now. And the one thing that I would like to pass on to people is how to learn about this stuff. Because especially if you're on your own, it's very difficult trying to get through everything that's out there. The Collegium is going to be a wonderful resource for people, but once they complete it, I want to make sure that they have the tools they need to continue their development beyond the Collegium and to become the best whatever it is they want to be. It's very easy to get lost in the woods in spirituality, and there are some folks that just never quite make it back. And I would prefer knowing that there are good, competent folks who are well-educated, who are well-grounded, and know how to tell good information from bad and be able to pass that along to the people they are working with or teaching themselves eventually.
No, you know what? That's freaking amazing, because I think what you're tapping on, especially with ethics, is something that's really, really needed right now in a community, because we have a lot of practitioners that are coming in, and some old ones that have kind of blurred the line on proper ways to do things. And I think that people, if you're going to do a practice, you need to learn the proper way. So it's a very much needed class right now, because so many people are confused about what the line is in this community. And that's crazy.
I think it's important to also teach that, because people believe, because they see so many older practitioners just doing this and throwing wherever they want to throw or casting whatever spell they want, that there is no consequences. And we as practitioners, as time goes along, there's that consequences come to us eventually. It may not be in the same way that we threw it out, but it does hit back. And
right.
When it hits back, what you had done, because for some reason it like pops up in your head like, oh, that was for that time.
Exactly. I think, depending on your practice, of course, with me, it's voodoo. So in voodoo, there is a connection and a commitment to my spirit, to my Loa. There's a certain way that they prefer things to be done. If I don't do it that way, I have to answer to them. So, of course, it's like a mama and a father. I have consequences that hold me in line. There are a lot of people that don't have that. And then, go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's a really, really valid point. And while folks who do learn within a tradition usually get a very good, strong sense of ethics, which is wonderful. One of the phenomena, if you want to call it that we've had since the 80s in the metaphysical community, though, is the development and spreading of the eclectic practitioner who like to blend elements from different traditions together, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But sometimes, especially if they're solitary, they miss out on all of the ethics and the discernment that goes with any particular tradition. I am very much a pop culture pagan. I love using examples from comic books and movies and TV shows and all of that. And when it comes to magic, one of the examples I like to pull out and show people are from the current series of James Bond movies when they talk about what it means to be a 00. And there are a couple of times in different films where they say a 00 license, that just means you're licensed to kill, and Bond will respond, but also not to kill. The idea is if you're a 00 and you're given an assignment, you are given the latitude to decide, okay, does this target need to die or not? Will letting this person live still allow the mission to be accomplished or accomplish something else that is of equal value? And that's the thing that I think we're missing a lot of in the metaphysical community in general. Everyone and their brother, they learn this stuff. It's fascinating. It's a wonderful new skill set, and they get so full of it, and they're like, oh, well, now I can get even with this person and that person, and oh, I can do this, oh, I can do that. Never thinking about, should they? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that comes with maturity as well, because I feel like when you get older, a lot of the times where you may have wanted to destroy that person or, you know, all these other things, it just doesn't seem worth your energy either.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, I think when they're taking your class, you know, learning about ethics, that's when you'll also explain to them, like, how much energy do you want to emit out to this small path of revenge?
Absolutely. Conversely, though, also a big holdover from the 80s and 90s is this idea of fluffy bunny metaphysics, where it's like, oh, I'm only going to deal with the light. I'm never going to have a bad thought. I'm never going to do this kind of thing. That's not the world we live in.
Absolutely not.
Should you hex indiscriminately? No, by no means. But that doesn't mean it's not called for sometimes. And I have a friend who is a traditional witch, and she has said more than once, if you're going to heal, you have to hex. You have to know how to do both to be effective at either.
She's right.
That's agreed.
And my fellow guardians and I, we joke a lot. In some areas, we're not terribly welcome. We are seen as too aggressive and too arrogant. And other areas, they love us. They think we're fantastic. They are thrilled to death when we arrive. And we're good with either way. We really are. Our job is to keep people safe. How we keep people safe, they don't need to worry about. That's our job. That's our burden to shoulder. And we are good with that.
And as long as you're good with yourself, their opinion doesn't really matter anyway.
That's also true.
I think the most important thing that people need to kind of get to is, because you get a lot of people who come into traditions or into this because they want to hex, because they're upset. And they never look at protection. They never look at grounding work. They never look at shadow work. They skip it. It's like they come in at A and they go all the way to Z. And then it creates all these other problems in between because they weren't properly taught.
Absolutely.
So you see that so much nowadays. It's crazy.
Well, and it's the times we live in, you know? Yes, it's for those of us who've been practicing for a while, sure, it is frustrating to see this. But at the same time, I completely understand why the mindset is there. I understand why, because these poor folks are trying to find something to use to make sense of their world, to bring some sense, if not of peace, of safety to their world. And I think that's where a lot of problems happen, is being safe and having peace are not necessarily the same thing. They can be, but they're not synonymous. And depending on your circumstances, you may not be able to be both at any given time. And this is not something one does because, it's the right thing to do at the time. This is a life choice. And taking it on or ending it should be a very serious and sober decision-making process. I think about when I started out so many years ago, I was obsessed with the idea of fire, and I'm like, I want to be all about the fire. I want to have, fire spirits and fire totems and fire gems and fire symbols all over this stuff because fire, rawr, I'm an Aries. I want to be all about the fire. And 30 years on, the fire's valuable. I have since learned I have absolutely no water in my astrological chart. And my sun sign, moon sign, and rising sign are all fire signs. So it's like, I've got the fire, but as I've gotten older, as I've practiced more, as I've interacted with people, I find I'm much more of an earth person. Even down to the the totem spirit I work with. It's just like, okay, this is where I need to be. And it's kind of funny too, because there was a parallel. I take historical fencing, so we use big swords. And I remember talking to my coach one day, about a year and a half ago, I guess. And we were going through a particular exercise that kind of required you to be nimble on your feet. And at 6'2" and better than 250 pounds, nimble is not something I do. And I just said to him, I said, Coach, what do I do here? Because I'm not going to be able to move as fast as these folks. And it's not that I don't want to. And I may be able to do it in a burst now and then, but really it's not about, I'm not like my buddy over here who basically he's dancing around on the floorboards. And my coach, who is as tall as me and a beanpole, looks me straight in the eye, no judgment whatsoever, and he says, make them come to you. And that completely changed my outlook on this particular move, and it impacted how I fenced from that point forward. And when I look back on my metaphysical practice over the past few decades, I see where it's that sort of thing again. Fire's great, but earth, it's hard to move the mountain. You can throw water on a fire and it'll go out right away. You dump water on the mountain, and when it comes to doing the protection work that I do for people, whether it's groups I hang out with or at festivals or what have you, I have found that I am far more effective when I internalized that and started working with that.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, because in voodoo, there's a thing that when a Loa takes your head, you take on characteristics of that spirit, which means that you are no longer just Tonya. Whatever attributes that spirit has, whatever power that spirit has, you have. So when you go into ceremony, you're not going in as yourself. You're going in literally combined. And that's where you stand strong, because that is your internal power. That is your power. So I love the way that you said that you were the mountain. And he saw that. He saw that you didn't have to charge after people. All you had to do was stand your ground, and that was your power. I love that, Frank. And
It affects so much. I mean, really, I'll probably say this several times over the course of the evening, but so much of what I've learned in fencing has impacted how I explain magic to people. A similar situation, one of the other coaches who I love fencing, I love sparring with her. She's this tiny little thing. I can fold her up and put her in my pocket. And when we're sparring, if I keep her at my distance, where if I keep her where, you know, she's at like the last foot of my sword, she rarely can get in on me. As skilled as she is, she can't get in. If I let her in any closer than that, I'm a dead man. I'm a pin cushion. My head's rolling down the gateway there. You know, it doesn't matter. But in that sense, it's one of those where it's like, okay, just because you may not be as fast or as large as your opponent doesn't mean you don't have your ways of doing things. I'm not as fast as she is, but if I just keep her in a circle around me, she's not touching me. Mm-hmm. If I let her in, no matter what I do, I'm going to be a pincushion.
Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, that you say it that way as well, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to, especially when you start teaching a class of ethics and things, people start worrying that they're not where other people are, or that their way is not the same as someone else's. And they may find that because they are not that same person, their magic doesn't, or their spellcraft, all of that doesn't work that way because it's not theirs.
Correct.
It's something they don't connect with. So I have a question for you. And
sure.
Don't just say because I asked you, why are you teaching at the Collegium?
Well, the most immediate reason was you asked me. I mean, really, I do enjoy the teaching process. As I get older, I'm finding that, you know, that there are holes in the knowledge base of the generations coming up. And I figure if I do my part to plug those holes and give them what they need to make proper choices and informed choices about their path, no matter what it is, then I've done my work. You know, being a new practitioner is scary, especially if you're by yourself. And the more knowledge you have, the better you will be and the safer you will be.
That's true. I think I've been by myself since I started. So I've been a solitary eclectic practitioner forever. So, but you know, what is it that you would say to, you know, your students when they first step into the class? What is going to be the wisest first sentence that you would give them?
What year is it?
Why? Why do you say that?
There is, you see this more with pagans and heathens than you do with magicians from other faith traditions. But there is a mild obsession with how things were done back in the day. How were they done back in, you know, pre-Christian Ireland or pre-Christian Sweden, or, you know, how were they done in the 18th century? We don't live then. We live in the 21st century, and you have to apply 21st century sensibilities to your practice. There are some things that you really can't compromise on. You know, certain ingredients, what have you. Of course not. You can't compromise on that. And there are some traditions, like in heathen traditions, it was the norm to make blood sacrifices to the gods. It's no longer done. Some individuals still do, but as a large practice, no, it's not done anymore. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that we think it's bad. It's just, it's not practical for a lot of people these days. Because when they're making sacrifices, they're sacrificing like 3 horses, 12 pigs, things like that. It's like That's just not feasible right now. Also, with the nature of offerings you make to the various spirits and deities, a lot of folks are like, well, you know, I really want to make an offering to the gods, but I don't have a lot of money right now. Do you have water? Do you pay for water? Yeah, make an offering of water. Mm-hmm. It's about what you're putting into it. When you are in a position to put something better out, by all means, put something better out. But don't be trapped by ideas that are outdated or that made sense for a particular time. One of the things that I love, and this is why I want to teach how to learn about things, Gardnerian Wicca is... I'm sorry?
The frou-frou Wicca.
Sort of frou-frou. I mean, Wicca is as valid a religion as any. Mm-hmm. What I don't like is the claim of how ancient it is, because it's not. Mm-hmm. It was invented at the earliest in the 30s. But Gardnerian Wicca was founded by a fella who was a Freemason, a nudist, and into BDSM.
In 1953.
Yeah. None of these are bad in and of themselves. But when all of a sudden they become part of a religious practice that you're saying this is how it has been done, that's not right. You need to be educated about these things. Now, if you are a 21st century person and you are aware of this, you look at this, but you say, I still see value in this for me as a spiritual practice, rock on with your bad self and do it. You know, use the scourge, practice, be naked in your rights, by all means. But don't claim that it's ancient or that it's more authentic because it's ancient, because it's not. Another wonderful example, and I have to laugh about this because I see a lot of presenters doing this and it's hilarious. What do we know about ancient heathen religious practice? This is what we know. We have no idea how the Norse folks of the Viking Age carried out their religious practices. We have a couple of little hints here and there that we can glean from the stories that have survived, but there's really nothing written down about how their religious practices were carried out. So a lot of what modern heathens do are they take what elements they can find from the sources available and try to build on it in a way that makes sense in a modern context, which again, nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but own up to it. Don't claim it's ancient. Don't claim that this is the way it has to be done because this is the way it was done then, because we just don't know.
Mm-hmm. I know you and I have had the conversation as well, because we were talking about, how everyone is trying to understand the gods of like maybe their ancestors or different practices that they want to know. Mm-hmm. But everyone forgets about the gods of the area that they're in. And so Frank and I were talking, he's like, what about the gods of where we're at right now, the Native American gods? What about all these gods, and deities that are here in this land? Why are we trying to go back to that other land instead of working with the deities also here?
True.
And the caveat with that, though, and this is something we all have to be careful of, is irresponsible cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm. There are things that, for me as a Caucasian male in American society, are not right for me to use or practice. There are several Native American practices I will not even attempt because it would be disrespectful to not just the people, but to their gods. Now, if a friend of mine who's Native American gifted me with something and said, this is how you use it, yeah, I would do it. Because it's like, okay, they've pretty much given me permission. They're saying, yes, we think enough of you that you can do this. But there are things I won't do because it's like, I respect it. Do I want to be there and watch? Oh, yeah, absolutely. If I'm allowed to be there, I want to see it. But adopting the practice for myself, no. But I want to be aware of it. I want to be aware of, like in heathenism, we talk about the Landvetter, who are the various kinds of land spirits that are around. There's a whole bunch of them over in the Nordic countries, but there's a whole bunch of land spirits over here that never even heard of Europe necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just as important to work with them as it is to call out to our ancestors from whatever country our forebears came from. And part of that is, for good or ill, however we got here, we were born here. We need to be cognizant of the fact that we are part of this land now, and that includes the spirits that we work with. I make it a point to work with the spirits in and around my house. And happily, we have a pretty good relationship with them, especially the ones that are in the house because they play with our cats all the time. Oh, it's fun except at 3 a.m. But the key to this is, whether you want to look at it in terms of ethical practice or proper understanding, you need to be aware of where you're practicing as much as what you're practicing.
Right.
That's true. That's very true. So what is it that you would say to the students of the Collegium when they come to learn from you?
Other than ask them what year it is?
Other than ask them what year it is.
Other than that, I would tell them that my job is not to tell them what their personal spiritual practice is. My job is to show them what they have to work with here in the land. My job is to help them to understand that it's not just about what you read in the books. It's about the air you breathe, the ground you walk on, the animals that you see, the water you drink. You are part of this land as much as you may be a descendant from some other ancestor from across the ocean. But there's no reason you can't adapt your practice to this land and to acknowledge this land and acknowledge being a part of this land.
I think that's very good, because you hit on a really strong point that a lot of times when people start to research or expand, they're looking for something that is somewhere else. And they tend to overlook what is around them. I have a spirit in my house. In fact, last night, and it's the male, and he always stays in my bedroom, always. And so last night I came out the restroom, and it was the first time I walked through him. And when I walked through him, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, oh, excuse me, because I felt like I walked through his presence and I bumped into him. And when I did it, I looked behind me and I was like, okay, who are you saying excuse me to? But I think the thing is that I acknowledged him because I know he's there. I know a lot of times he stays around my altars. I'm not sure if he protects my work, if he protects my candles, but I understand there's a purpose that he serves while he's there. So I'm always respectful of his energy. So when I do my work, I always keep him in mind. Now, of course, if he's not supposed to be there and it's a different type of energy, then that would be a different story. But I think a lot of times people don't realize you do have land spirit. You do have house spirits. A lot of times when things are breaking down in your house, same thing with my dog. Yoda will get up in the morning and he'll turn over on his back on the floor and somebody is rubbing his stomach, because he does that thing that he does when people rub his belly. So I know that there's spirits there that are playing with him. So I tend to be very respectful, and I pour water out for them to make them so that we have a very, united relationship, because they take care of mine and I want to take care of them. Absolutely. So sometimes people don't get it. So I'm glad that you're bringing that in, because people always look for something, like you say, ancient. They want to go back. They want the green tablets. They want the seals. They want this. But a lot of times the spirits that are surrounding you are the ones that are opening doors and making things happen for you.
I really feel like some people always want something ancient, but what's ancient, it doesn't mean that it's always good for you.
Oh, right. True. Absolutely true.
The ancient, ask for more than the ones that are already around you. And then you're in trouble.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead, Frank, because I was just going to agree. She's right.
Yeah, and these relationships are really, really important. Even when you're moving, just to acknowledge that, hey, I'm leaving. Thank you for being my friend. And if you're so inclined, invite them to join you if they want, and move along. You're going to see that more with like house spirits than land spirits per se. But even with the land spirits, it's important to keep a good and respectful relationship going on. A few months ago, I had this really weird feeling that something was going to pass that was going to be not great. So I went about reinforcing the wards on my home and property. And the house spirits were fine. And I put the word out to all the spirits surrounding. I said, listen, I am not putting these up against you. I am putting these up because there is something going on. And the immediate response was from the spirits outside. I kid you not, I practically heard this to where you could pick it up on a mic. May we come inside? It's like, of course you can come inside. Now, the reality of the matter is these spirits have been here longer than I have. And I'll lay odds that if they wanted to, they could enter whether they wanted to, whether I had the wards up stronger or not. But the point of the matter is they asked first. They showed me the respect that I showed them. And I cannot stress enough how important respect is in any of your spiritual dealings, whether it's with land spirits, ancestor spirits, the fae, the deities, whoever you're dealing with. Respect is key. How you show that respect may vary from tradition to tradition or pantheon to pantheon, but respect is going to be important no matter what.
I feel like a lot of people don't have respect. I feel like we have a lot of people in this mindset, and they believe that the spirits are genies. You call on them, you give them an offering, and then they have to give you what you want. But rarely have they formed a relationship with them, especially the fae. The fae are so finicky, and you have to be very specific with how you word it, because they will find whatever loophole they can, and then you're in trouble.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate in that I know a fae lawyer. Her practice is, I won't say is only about the fae, but it's a significant portion of it is in dealing with the fae, and she's done it for long enough and has enough of an insight into them where, for me and several other folks, if we think there's an issue with fae going on, we go to her and say, you talk to them. Because she knows how to talk to them and to look out for the little traps they set.
Have a fae lawyer.
Yep.
That's freaking cool, though.
She's fantastic.
Do I know her?
You might. Have you ever met Aleha?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Her husband is a guardian, so he and I know each other in that regard. But yeah, Aleha gives classes. She actually gave a class for Hallowed Homecoming this year. So if you're signed up, you can go back and look at the video of it later.
Okay, cool. I will. I was like, I missed all these classes.
You'll get to see them. You're registered.
I am ready. I'm ready to see some classes. So, I mean, what is it? I know you said, you're hoping to bring, knowledge, ethics, understanding of, in the respective spirits. Are you going to be teaching how to work with certain spirits? Like, is there specific ones that you're going to really touch base on?
I don't know yet. At this point, I'm kind of very meta about things. Again, we have such a wonderful variety of traditions that are being represented by the other members of the faculty. I really don't want to step on anyone's toes. I would much rather use the time I have with the students to give them, okay, you're learning all this spiritual stuff. Let me tell you about how some of this is going to work in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like okay, you're learning how to do this. Let's talk about when it's right to do this, or that sort of thing. The things that oftentimes get swept under the carpet, and either because of time or while we don't have to worry about this with the Collegium, you do have instructors who are not always the most ethical themselves. And they'll leave things out, or they decide, it's like, well, I'm going to teach this thing, but, what you do with it, that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
And I figure part of my job in all of this is to be that voice outside of the class that says, don't forget to think about this.
Yeah.
It's great to get excited about it, and it's awesome. And listen to what they tell you, but don't forget to use your brain.
Will you
know
be teaching?
Oh,
go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
Shishi. I was going to say you're right. It's needed, because I did a class last weekend, and I talked to a couple of people afterwards, and they were kind of like asking questions, and I realized because I do it all the time that I miss steps with them, because you just automatically assume, no, you already know to do this. You know how to do this. And that's exactly what I think I thought. But when I talked to these people, they were like, well, you didn't tell me this, or you didn't put this into it. And I was like, you know what? I'm so sorry. So I think you're right. You need somebody who's going to look at it from a different angle and say, did you set this up? Did you set your wards up? Is this the proper time to do it? Is this the right way that you want to do it? Because sometimes when you get in the zone and you're showing somebody how to do the work, there's a lot of things that just automatically, oh, I do it. I don't think about it. And I think that's what's going to happen, because I'm even trying to be more conscious myself of that. I didn't realize it.
One of the things that helped me and still helps me with teaching was talking with a martial artist friend. We had a conversation about the belts, which belts are a bigger thing in the West than they are in the East. The different colored belts you have, especially like in Taekwondo, where you have a white, yellow, and then green and blue and red and polka dotted and things like that. The original belt system was you got one belt, you didn't wash it. So yeah, it turned yellow, then it turned brown, then it turned black. Okay, that's where that comes from.
I did not know that. And I have an orange belt.
So the different colors are a Western thing, and also the stripes on the belt. That is a Western thing as well, because it works well with how in our society people are taught things. We have a very goal-oriented society. People often forget about, the journey is as important as anything else. It's not just about getting your next stripe or ranking up to the next belt, although it is really nice. But he was explaining to me the different degrees of black belt. And he said, so when you get your first black belt, your first degree black belt, the only thing that says is you've mastered the art. You are now a competent practitioner of this art. You are very likely not going to hurt yourself when you're doing things, and you have enough control over yourself that you will know how to not hurt someone if you're sparring with them or fighting with them. That's what the black belt means. The second degree black belt, at second degree, and it may vary depending on what art you're learning, the second degree is when you start teaching the white belts. And the idea behind that is, as a second degree black belt, when you are teaching the forms, you are seeing them from a whole new perspective now. So, when you were learning them as a white belt, it's like, okay, I'm this, that, and the other thing. But now that you're a master of the art, and now that you're teaching, and you're teaching at this new level, you're like, oh, I see how this works now. This makes a lot of sense about why we do this. And you start to see the philosophy and the art behind it, the beauty of it, the aesthetics of why you do that particular way. And the same goes as you go up to the different degrees of belts. Like at third dan, you start teaching white belts and yellow belts. So you're looking at all of those forms with this new perspective. I mentioned earlier that I do historical fencing. Well, for a client of mine, their son has been bored out of his mind, and I knew that he enjoyed swords and knives and things like that. So I said, you know what? Over the net, I'll teach you some basics of historical. And his eyes just lit up. And I'm like, great, no problem. So we've done 2 sessions now. And it's very limited. Like, we can't spar. And I'm not going to be able to teach him how to do blade-on-blade contact until Zoom's over. Or until the COVID issue is resolved, I should say. Mm-hmm. But in doing so, I'm finding now teaching these basic things that I learned years ago, I see them completely differently now than I did when I was learning them. And I won't lie, it's kind of cool when I do this one little trick just to show how you blend all these things together. And the kid just said, "What just happened?" Because he just moves that fast. So as a teacher, when you go back and you start teaching these basic ideas again, so for me, it's like, my basic protection course, or, if you're teaching ethics to someone who's being exposed to it for the first time in the context of metaphysics, you're looking at that with your experience. You're looking at it with all this time under your belt and all of these events that have happened in your life as a practitioner. And it's not just a matter of having examples, concrete examples to share with them. It's also the idea that you understand how these things all interconnect together, and it affects how you talk about them. I don't teach my basic protection class now the same way that I taught it when I first started 10 years ago. It's changed a lot since then. There are things I have added. There are things I've taken out. There are things that I have altered the way I teach them, because it's like, well, okay, this worked okay at the time, but I found a method that's worked better since then. Mm-hmm. And that's an important lesson right there, is not to stop learning. Mm-hmm. You're never going to know everything, and there is no shame in not knowing everything.
So
you have to be open.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say you have to be open to new ideas, new methods, and sometimes you're going to learn something that's great, and eventually you may learn that it's time to retire.
Will you be teaching aspects of spiritual steel in your class?
It depends. That's something I would probably talk to the other faculty members about. Again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes if they're going to be teaching protection in their own classes. So, and I also don't want to repeat the same thing for the students. I want to make sure that if there's something I can teach them that they're not getting from one of the other courses, absolutely, I'll work that in.
Because there's so much to spiritual still, and you have so many stories that go with it, such as, the Ouija board story. There's so much. So I didn't mean it just in the form of protection, but also just in the form of common sense.
Well, I just developed a new class that I taught for the first time at Hallowed Homecoming that I probably will teach at the Collegium, because it is not tradition specific. It's an idea about how to think about how you're protecting your home. It doesn't speak to specifically what you do, but this is what you need to worry about at this level, at this level, at this level. And it's then, the individual student will fill in whatever method they want to use to take care of that particular aspect of it.
Got it. That's smart. Mm-hmm. Very smart.
Again, we live in a community. We're not in a vacuum, and we're not on an island. You have to allow the fact that people come from different backgrounds, different traditions, different styles of metaphysical practice. And if you're going to be effective, you have to teach in a way that they can take something useful and apply it to how they do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Lynna, you've been quiet. You have questions?
I was thinking, actually, when he was talking about teaching, that one of the great things about teaching is when these people come in and they ask questions that maybe I don't want to say beyond, but that it's been a while since we thought about that. And so they bring important information back to us.
Yeah.
you know, like that when you're first starting out, you get the basic things, and then as you progress, we tend to forget about those basic things, but those basic things are very important, and we need to be reminded of them.
Absolutely.
And so when new people come in and they ask me questions, it's like, oh yeah, you know.
You have to have a foundation, period. You have to have a place where you start. And for a lot of people, protection is going to be it. And then two, I think ethics should be next, because if you're going to start a practice, you ethically need to know how to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. Everybody wants to learn love work, money work, spell work, hex, whatever it is, but there's a lot more to it. And we see it in the community where there are a lot of people that are taken advantage of because the foundation isn't strong, and they're trusting people that may not have the best of foundations either.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know how to observe that, you know, like we live in a large community, as you know, like what you guys are saying, and people who are just stepping in don't know who are the scammers and who are not.
Yeah. So Lynna's right. The basics, the foundation definitely has to be set. And I'm glad that he's tackling that, because we talk about this a lot with ethics and how to do things properly. And you're going to have some people that want to do it that way. And then you're going to have some people that they don't want to be bound or limited by that information because they don't want to follow that path. And free will, they have the right to do it.
But no matter what path you follow, don't we all kind of have our own set of ethics already established? I mean,
we should.
You got the Wiccan Rede, the Christians have the 10 Commandments, you know, we've got the Golden Rule.
Yeah, Buddha has Reglamon, so yeah, we should.
It's all ethics. And if people will just listen to their own ethics.
But you're assuming that people have them.
Yeah.
That's like going along with philosophy. There's a difference between ethics and morals.
Right.
And this is where we get into the complicated part about ethics, is not just have them, but where are you getting them from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lynna brought up, the 10 Commandments for Christians. Okay. Technically, Christians only have one commandment according to the New Testament,
which is to love everyone.
Exactly.
As themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back to the 10 Commandments, okay, the worst thing to ever happen to the Bible was the King James Version. The absolute worst thing. It was a political work as much as anything else.
Right.
If you go back to the original, like Aramaic, where we find our primary sources for that, the first commandment, it says something along the lines of, I'm the Lord your God that brought you out of Egypt, yada, yada, yada. You shall have no gods before me. It doesn't say you shouldn't have other gods. Archaeology has shown us in temple era Judaism, they found ruins of a temple that had the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant or whatever they had at the time would have been set. And they also found side chapels to local deities. The God of the Old Testament, Yahweh.
You've got the archangels and the angels and the saints in different levels.
Well, the saints are a whole different deal. That's a Christian thing. The angels and the archangels depends on who you talk to about how important they are.
As far as no other gods before me, in that format, there are other things or other beings that we talk to and we honor, but there's different levels.
No. In the case of the first commandment specifically, it was talking about other deities. The only thing the first commandment called for is that adherents worship Yahweh first, then they could worship Baal or Horus or whoever the other local deities were. But Yahweh had to come first. Yahweh had to get pride of place, the best sacrifices, all that stuff. Then the other gods could be honored, but Yahweh had to come first. Another problem we have is the Virgin Mary. The word describing her in the New Testament, in the original source text, is not virgin. It is young woman. Not the same thing.
True.
So politics and social mores are going to factor into a lot of our sources for ethics. That's something we have to keep in mind for this. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, but it does mean you have to look at it with a critical eye. The closest thing we have to ethics in the heathen community would be a section from the Poetic Edda called the Havamal, which was supposed to be the collected sayings of Odin when he was having a chat with some other guy. And that's a lot of very interesting stuff. It's a lot of good basic ethics, but it's also a lot of griping and complaining. But that's the Norse gods for you. The Norse gods were more human than other deities were in a lot of ways.
Well, I know, going back to what Lynna said, and she was stating, when you're practicing, isn't there, like, with each practice that you pull, is there not a set of rules, so to say, to follow? As a solitary eclectic, we tend to, because we can pull from whatever we want. Let's say somebody's studying Wicca, they don't have to follow the Wiccan read. They may not take that with them because that may not fit in that eclectic practice that they're putting together.
No, potentially not. But also, they may find something that works better. I know a lot of Wiccans that don't use the rule of 3. They'll use the Irish rule of curses. And the Irish rule of curses is, if you're justified, you're in the clear. If you're wrong, you get nailed 7 times. So
that sounds worse than the Wiccan read.
Well, the Irish took their curses very seriously.
Yeah, I was like, that sounds worse. I'm like, I just stick with the read. I'm like, forget it. I'll just go, or the rule of 3. I'm like, I'll just go for the 3. But isn't it 3 by 3 by 3 though?
According to some sources, yes. There is. If you go online, look up the Wiccan Read Project, and it is a basically someone's research project on all the different versions and the original sources for the Wiccan Read and the Rule of 3, because the Wiccan Read and the Rule of 3 are technically 2 different things, although the Wiccan Read references the Rule of 3.
And the Wiccan Read is fairly new.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always in that. It wasn't always in Wicca.
I mean, a lot of the religions, a lot like the neo-pagan religions now, are fairly new. Wicca is at the latest started in the early 50s. At the earliest started in the mid 30s. Also true, the heathen religions, they started coming up in the 70s. The African diaspora religions, they've been around for a while. So they've got a better claim than most. But it's the thing. One thing I would tell the students coming in, or at least those who are interested in neo-pagan or heathen paths, and basically any non-big 3 path, the one thing I would tell them is, just because a religion is young does not mean it's not valid.
Also true.
You know,
I think like Christianity is fairly new.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively, I mean, Judaism is what, 6,000 years old?
Isn't the oldest practiced religion, isn't it Hinduism?
Currently, I believe yes. But don't ever call them pagan. They get a little nasty about that.
Really?
Yeah. But like Christianity, one of my favorite things is, was Jesus a Christian?
He was a Jew.
Exactly. He was a very good Jew. He was a good Jewish boy. His mama loved him. He was a carpenter. He had a great job. Hung out with a bad crowd. No.
He ate well. Yeah, no, I mean, I try to tell people that as well. I'm like, Christianity is fairly new, and they get sensitive if you tell them that. So I just don't tell them.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Some people argue that Christianity is 2,000 years old. It's more like 1,700 years old. But and I would also point out that when Constantine converted, he did so on his deathbed.
Of course he did.
Well, and he was pragmatic. He was very much a pragmatist about it. He's like, okay, you know what? I got no problem with these Christians. I think they're doing fine. They've been doing the bureaucratic work of the empire for 200 and some years now. Ooh, pardon me. Sorry, I had nachos for
dinner. What did you eat? Oh, okay, I was like, what did you eat?
But that's one thing a lot of folks don't realize too. Christianity became acceptable in the Roman Empire not because of some great revelation among the populace. It was the fact that Christian communities, because they had to manage themselves, became expert logisticians. They were really good at gathering and redistributing the various resources within the community. So, okay, this family needs food. Make sure they get that much food. This person needs some clothes. Make sure we get some clothes to them. The Romans saw this and thought, these people are perfect bureaucrats. And so you started seeing Christians getting civil service positions in the imperial government. And by the time of Constantine, he's like, yeah, you know what? These guys aren't so bad. I think we'll go ahead and make it legal for them to exist in the empire. However, being the Roman emperor and realizing that he has to do the stuff that Roman emperors do, there ain't no way he's getting into heaven doing the stuff an emperor has to do. So he converted on his deathbed. So that way his slate was wiped clean and he could go straight to heaven. So yeah, Christianity's had about 1,700 years now at this point. Still fairly young. Islam is probably around 1,000 at this point, I think. Fun thing a lot of people don't always realize is that the Hebrew scriptures, aka the Old Testament, are used by all three religions.
Really?
Yep. Judaism. When I was in college, our professor refused to refer to it as the Old Testament. She said they are the Hebrew scriptures because they are still being used and used as current text by Jews all over the world. There's no reason to call it the Old Testament. So the Hebrew scriptures are used by Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I didn't know the Muslims used it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, their follow-on is the Quran.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I saw something, I think it was in, not Marcus, the Demon King.
Marcus.
No, it was Marcus. I think it was Marcus. The Demon King. I remember seeing something in his interview about not being sure where to find the other books of the Bible that aren't being used. Any library, look up the Apocrypha.
Oh.
All of those books are still available. You can find them very easily. They're just not included in the official canon.
They're in the Catholic Bible.
A lot of them are, but not all of them.
Right. The Mary Magdalene one is not in there.
No, nor is the Gospel of Peter.
The Apocrypha.
Yep.
I might have to check that out. It's only in the library, or can I go?
Oh, you can find it in bookstores.
Okay.
Just type in Apocrypha. You can find it on Amazon.
That's what I was thinking about doing.
I have one version. It's called The Lost Books of the Bible.
I heard of that.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how good it was. Is it really good?
As far as I can tell, I mean, it's about as thrilling for me to read as it is to read the Bible. If you look at it, you have to read it from like an anthropological context. It's like, okay, these are interesting, and it's fun to look at them and say, why didn't they make it in? That sort of thing. Control. Also, what was going on at the time. One of the things I find really fascinating about, if you're talking in a Christian context, one of the key differences between Catholics and Protestants, or really more particularly Catholics and charismatic Catholics and evangelical Protestants, is the idea that the latter take the Bible literally, but your mainstream Catholics, and especially the clergy, understand that the Bible was inspired. It should not be taken literally, including Genesis. It should not be taken literally.
It's a parable.
Exactly. Which is kind of cool, because, you have priests who are paleontologists.
I think it is, but I feel like, people take it out of context. So
these are stories that keep it in place for us at the time. Even in the times, if you look at like Norse myths that you would find in the Eddas or various myths around the world, these aren't meant to be taken literally. They are poetic. They're poetry. They're designed to entertain and give you ideas. And it's an artsy fartsy explanation of something. It's not necessarily literally what they believe happened. Mm-hmm. We weren't around. We don't know.
Right.
So what do you think? Like, let's say we don't know that it really originally happened. What do you think occurred besides politics that caused this whole evangelical run, and for it to be, I guess I'm trying to see how do I put it together, because we say they're parables, but some people take them very literally. And if you say to some people, hey, they're just parables, they're just stories, they get very upset with you.
I need to choose my words very carefully.
I know. I was trying to figure out how can I ask the question very carefully.
I'm going to speak about this in high level and try not to point fingers per se. There is a continuum in how religions are practiced and how spirituality is practiced. And the metaphor I like to use for this is a giant bonfire in the middle of a clearing in the middle of the woods. Okay? The big bonfire itself is the divine, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what. Brahma, Zeus, Ra, whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. But that's the divine source of things. Mm-hmm. Right up on the fire are your hardcore ascetics and your mystics. The people who they want to be enveloped by the fire and ignore it to everything else. It's like the fire is all, and whatever happens beyond the fire is relevant. Some of them get burned up in the fire. Some of them like to walk on the coals, what have you. They're the ones who are like, you want to do that. That's great. Rock on with your bad self. Walk on your coals, fold yourself up into a 3-foot cube, whatever. Doesn't matter. The people sitting closest to the fire, who are really, really close. They're like shoulder to shoulder. They are desperate for the warmth and the light because everything else scares them to death. They don't want to do anything. They just want to be warm and in the light. They don't care about anything else that's going on. They want to be warm and in the light. It doesn't matter. So, and you know what? We're not going to let anybody else come in here and sit this close to the fire. They're wrong. They want to sit out there where there's more room and be around things. No, we want to sit right up to the fire, and they can't join us because they're wrong. So then you have folks who are sitting a little bit further out from the fire. It's like, let them have it. It's fine. But they're warm and relaxed, and they're drinking with each other, and it's fine. Then you've got the folks who are like, well, you know what? These folks are all, they're obviously really cold and we don't want to take anything from them. So you have this other group of people who go in, they'll take a log from the fire that's already started burning, and they'll start smaller fires dotting all around in the circle. So it's like, yeah, we can sit here, and if you guys want to join us, that's fine. But if you want to sit by the main fire, that's cool too, whatever. And then at the edge of the woods, you have some people that they'll come into the fire once in a while, but they're just walking the perimeter. They're making sure nothing sneaks up on anybody from the woods. The people who are sitting closest to the fire, who are shoulder to shoulder and really like, we need to be warm, we need this, we can't do anything because we need to stay warm and be in the light. Those are your charismatic Catholics and your evangelicals. They're the ones who that they don't want to have to do anything. They just want to say, I believe this, therefore I am saved. Doesn't matter. It's like, I could be the worst piece of shit in the world, but because I'm a part of this church, I'm going to heaven. They're the ones you will hear making arguments about, well, it's about accepting God into your life, not about good works. It's like, okay, whatever. Sitting a little further out, you have like your mainline Protestants and some of your Catholics who are just like, it's fine. You know what? We can talk out here. Let them have that. There's still plenty of warmth and plenty of light for us. That's great. But, they're willing to talk to each other, talk to different people, holler over to people at the other little fires. The little fires all over the place are like your pagans and your little offshoots, your Pastafarians, all those guys. And then the folks that are walking the perimeter out by the woods are the idiots like me who don't necessarily get along well with everyone else, but gosh darn it, we're going to make sure that they're safe. Protestantism and evangelical Christianity especially is not really participatory in the sense that you're doing stuff. Like, people make fun of the Catholics because it's like sit, stand, kneel, go up, get your cookie, all that stuff. But it's a very participatory religion. And one of the things I love to point out to people is if you get a gathering of pagans and you look around the circle, you can tell the folks who were either born pagan or came to paganism from Catholicism or Judaism, because serious hardcore ritual, they're into it. They're down with it. It's cool. But the pagans who used to be Protestants, especially like your Baptists, your Methodists, they're looking like, I don't know what to do here.
And I'm all right. Or they're just learning it. But yeah. I did not notice there were comments, Frank, and so there's some questions here.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't see either.
So Noodle said, are the exorcists like movies such as having holy water, reading scriptures from the Bible, etc.? How can you tell? Are the exorcists like the movies such as having the holy water, reading scriptures from the Bible? I don't know if she's asking if you're like that kind of exorcist, but I can tell no. He is not that kind of exorcist.
No.
But she said, how can you tell? Sorry. How can you tell when someone's demon possessed?
Is depossessed or
demon possessed?
It really varies. For me in particular, there's a particular scent I pick up on if there's a demon present, like a hardcore, aggressive, malevolent demon present. There's a particular scent I'll pick up on. A lot of it, too, is behavior. And the problem you have with possessions, like full-blown possessions like that, is not telling whether it's possession or a psychological mental health issue. It's telling, is it possession and the mental health issue? Is a little bit of both. There are recorded cases where you have people who have legitimate diagnosed mental health issues, but were also possessed. And it makes the job a lot more difficult. the methods for making a hard assessment on whether or not it's a demon or not will vary from spiritual background to spiritual background, and even practitioner to practitioner. The thing that I smell is not something that other folks smell. It depends on the particular demon you're working with. Some of them are going to be a little more resistant to, say, holy symbols, and others would be like, if you pull out a Star of David and you're a Baptist, they're going to run away anyway. They don't care. It's a holy symbol. They're running off.
Someone said, I think you kind of answered this. How can you discern between psychosis and possession? I believe.
I cannot.
Right.
I cannot. That is why I consult with therapists. There are times where, like, if you have like actual levitation or really out there phenomena going on, then yeah, you're talking, 99.9% it's possession. But there are instances where there are no really dramatic events happening. It is just a behavior issue. And in those cases, absolutely, I will recommend that the individual see a therapist to get an evaluation done, preferably a psychiatrist, to not be irresponsible. I'm sorry.
I said, sorry, I'm doing weird things with my eyes. They're so dry. I didn't get to do my heat compresses. So I'm like,
oh
no. I know. I'm like, oh, they're killing me with light and everything. I'm like, man, my eyes are killing me. So I feel like, Lynna, did you have any other questions? Because I'm going to ask him one before we close out then.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening and taking it all in. We should be friends, Frank.
Sure. Look me up on Facebook.
All right.
He has the bear. The bear is his picture. We have Marcus, who I say is Demon Pooh Bear. And then we have Frank, who's just like the bear. Just the bear.
I had the most, don't do that. Just don't. A mental picture. Marcus walking around nothing but a t-shirt carrying a honey pot. It doesn't work.
What? I didn't have that thought.
Pooh Bear, and it's like Marcus. If you combine Marcus and Pooh, it just doesn't work.
Well, the thing is, they both look so friendly, right? And you're talking to them, and they're so nice, and people are like, we want to know them. And then when you make either one of them mad, though, then it's a different story. And Frank really can squeeze the life out of you. He does it with a regular hug. So, I just figured if he was mad at me one day, it'd probably be like he'd hug me to death. Like I would die from a Frank hug. He'd be like, you know what, come here, Shishi. Let me just hug you a little bit tighter than normal.
Like a bullet.
Like it's air breaking. It's the best hug ever, but man, it squeezes the air out of you. It really does.
Well, if you're gonna do something, do it right.
That's true. I'm like, Frank, so happy to see you. Thanks, Frank. I'm happy to see you too. Like get the air back. But then that's why Frank really does like have the energy of a bear, though. He really does. And when you have you meet him in person, that is literally the energy that's emitted. And that's
Marcus does have good hugs, though. He does. He really does.
I haven't had a Marcus hug yet.
Yes.
So I have to get a Marcus hug eventually. But then I will bring him a red shirt and I'll be like, wear this for Lynna. Like she said she likes you in red.
Yeah.
Go right. It's gonna be over to kill me. So Frank, I always like your scary stories. And it is October. So give me, as we close out, because I'm selfish, one of your famous scary stories.
Okay. Okay, do you want the Ouija board story or the thing in the woods story?
I didn't get the thing in the woods story.
Okay. So, my fellow guardians and I were at an event in the woods, and one of our number was just taking a walk on the paths, making sure everything was okay, and he picked up on a very strange feeling coming from this one area. So we're like, okay, we'll check it out tomorrow. Because, I mean, events were lining up. It's like, okay, we need to take care of this. But it's like, we need to look at this tomorrow. So the next day, he comes back and he says, it's bigger now. The feeling, now I'm picking it up much closer to where everyone else is. So we're like, oh, shit, we need to go deal with this. So I grabbed everyone who was available. And we followed the energy to this valley. And coming up from the valley was this awful, awful feeling. Think something like, with lots of tentacles and, just unpleasant. So we're down there. And it took us probably the better part of half hour, 45 minutes working together, trying a whole bunch of different things just to contain this thing and shove it down. And we finally got it to the point where it backed off. It's like, okay, we've done this enough. And we felt like we got hit by Mack trucks. We were exhausted. Everyone was sore. And we felt like crap. So we're wandering back up to one of the cabins to sit down, and I spotted one of the other folks at the event. I said, I need you to go get my wife and a couple other folks to help us out. And I was thinking there were just one or two people that would probably be able to help us. So there were 5 of us who went down and did this. About 10 minutes later, we're all sitting around a table, really miserable. And in comes this whole crew of women with their backpacks and their toolboxes full of essential oils. And they spent the next hour, doing energy cleansings on us, putting essential oils, all this stuff. My wife was with them, and she came and looked after me, and she said, "You feel like you're covered in tar."
Oh no!
So yeah, that was unpleasant.
How long ago was that, though?
That was 6 years ago, almost.
Did it pop back up?
It has made its presence known, but we also make our presence known. And we've made it a point now that whenever we go back to that spot, we, at least 2 of us go down and say, you mind your business, we'll mind ours. And we've not had any further problems. We have since learned, however, of a better way to handle that particular situation that we will be doing going forward that takes a big load off of us, which we are very happy for.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, but that's what we do. And I realize that's really not as cool and scary as it could have been.
But I mean, it's cool, but it wasn't the scary one.
All right, let me tell the Ouija board one. So, I'll tell the Ouija board one is far scarier. And ladies and gentlemen, what you need to take away from this is I hate Ouija boards. I hate them with a passion. I do not trust the damn things. And my inclination is to burn them all. So,
even the nice ones that have the trees and everything on it.
Hush.
I have that one.
So many, many moons ago, when I was a new guardian, I was a fairly experienced pagan by this point, but I was new to doing the work of a guardian. A friend of mine volunteered me to deal with a problem of a friend of hers. So went over there. There were these guys. What necessitated calling me was one of this particular circle of friends had committed suicide. And they were afraid it was because of something that happened related to a spirit they called up through a Ouija board. So I'm like, okay, let's check this out. So they brought me in, and it's a college apartment, so, you know, there's crap everywhere. But they show me this Ouija board, and I have to say, the problems aside, this was probably the most beautiful piece of pop art I have ever seen. It was gorgeous. It was really well done. It belonged hanging in a gallery, not being used as a Ouija board. But it was being used as a Ouija board, and so it was a problem. The group that made it, this circle of friends that made it, they did all of the, you know, the alphabet, the numbers, yes, no, goodbye. They were good as far as that goes, but they also included each of their individual sigils on the board. So, yeah. They had problems with something that came through the board and would not leave. Were trying to deal with it. One of their number apparently couldn't handle it and decided to commit suicide, which of course is tragic. And that's when they were talking to our mutual friend who contacted me. So we're sitting in there, and I'm like, okay, clear off as much space as you can. Opened up the board, and I started doing what I do to bring a spirit in, whether it wants to or not. And it was putting up a fight. It was like going fishing for a swordfish using a trout rod. It was not easy. But got it in the room, and it was flying around the room in circles trying to get away. And there was a visual, but it doesn't make much sense. It's kind of like light bending around something. Like there's a shape there, and the light bent around it. You see this kind of effect in movies. So it's like you can sort of see the shape, but it's not solid. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But I saw this thing flying around, and after a good bit of magic and a few extra commands, I got it back into the board, closed the board, and sealed it. And I'm like, okay, this thing needs to be destroyed. Unfortunately, I was also working with a group of other practitioners from a different tradition who said, no, we cannot burn it. You will set it loose. We will put it in the water. I got outvoted.
Oh.
So it's like, okay, so we're all driving to get rid of this thing in a stream and get pulled over by cops. And I'm like, really? It's going to be this kind of night?
Yep.
The cop ended up letting us go. So we got to where they wanted to go. They threw it in the stream, threw rocks on top of it. I still think it should have been burned. But that was the first time I've had to deal with a Ouija board problem, and I hate them. I hate them.
Well, they're not all that bad. Like, not every Ouija board story is that bad, right? So, yeah. Okay, fine, yeah.
Did you ever watch The Exorcist?
I did. So I watched it with my sister, and we were just talking about that. She's sitting here laughing. She's like, don't you hear the clink, clink, clink in her neck? I'm traumatized. And she's like, this was just a stupid movie. I was like, I don't know. I didn't like it.
You do know it was based on a real case.
I do. I did a paper on it actually for college. Yeah, I did the most haunted or some of the most haunted objects or stories in the US, and everybody in my class was scared after that. I thought it was an awesome project. They enjoyed it, but then they were like, we're just scared. They're very, very scared. So, and then one girl was like, I'm throwing out every doll I ever have in my whole life. Like, all my dolls are gone. And I was like, okay, well, doesn't mean your doll's haunted. And then, like, I told them about The Exorcist. They're like, we don't want to do anything. They're like, we want nothing to do with it. I was like, well, that doesn't mean it's gonna be you. They're like, we're just gonna go home and pray. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that didn't help him either, but okay, yeah. Go ahead and do that. But.
If you ever want to cure someone of being scared by The Exorcist, make them watch Exorcist 2.
I didn't even watch Exorcist 2.
Exorcist 2 was awful. It was an awful movie. Exorcist 3, however, was fantastic.
Nope. I'm letting those go. I'm watching other scary things now with peoples, like crazy people.
Are you watching The Haunting of Bly Manor?
I want to. I have not watched it yet. I told my sister we would do that together. We would watch The Haunting of Bly Manor today. But I just watched Book of Blood.
Haven't seen that one.
Books of Blood, I watched today, and I'm watching Monsterland.
What I will tell you and our audience for tonight, while not 100%, The Haunting of Bly Manor, it rings very true for me in some of the things I've dealt with over the years. Just about how they present themselves and why certain things happen the way they do, that sort of thing.
To get you to be pulled in and trust you. Trust them.
I will say this. It's not scary so much as it will make you very sad.
I don't want to be sad either. I do want to see it. But the House of Haunting Hill scared me a little bit. The broke neck lady.
It's the same producers, and some of the cast are in this too.
Yeah, that's what a friend was saying. Yeah. But I mean, there's some things I just have to let go of now. That other gifts are growing. I'm like, I can't sit there and watch too many demon possessed things. I just can't. My soul can't take it anymore. It just can't.
I've got a whole shelf of exorcism and possession movies on my TV stand.
I bet you do. That's the problem. You're like, those are great. I'm gonna just collect those. I'm like, let me just stick with Buffy and Angel for a little bit. Well, 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts is one of my favorite.
That's a good one. You want a funny one? I think it's called Hellblazers. Hold on, let me do a really quick web search. There is a movie. It is a comedy about exorcism, and it's hilarious. It's not Repossessed. Repossessed is okay, but it's not super. Hold on here. But the film itself, the one I'm thinking of, it's an interfaith group of exorcists who the way they work is they keep themselves in a constant state of sin so that if a regular exorcism won't work, then they'll grab the possessed person, kill themselves, and drag the demon down to hell themselves.
Oh my God.
So and the main character is a guy who loves his wife, and the head of the order keeps telling him, it's like, you need to cheat on your wife.
Right, like that's what's gonna happen. That's the best thing you can do. Cheat on the wife. No.
I love it because Clancy Brown's in it. He's one of my favorite actors. And forgive me now for those with gentle ears, but I think he says cocksucker 21 times throughout the movie.
That's it. That's it.
Hold on. Okay, come on. Here we go. I need to see if I can get this movie on DVD or Blu-ray. A really good one if somebody wants to see a exorcism movie is The Rite.
I saw that. I saw that too. That's not a new one though. It's like a few years old.
Conference. Yeah, it's a few years old. The conference that they use as the setting for me is a real conference, though the facilities they use are not that nice.
Mm. So does anyone have any more questions before we close out? Just asking. And sorry for the weirdness of my eyes because they're actually burning. Like, this is horrible.
That's okay. We love you anyway.
I have to find my drops. I'm like, geez. I have to make sure it's good because I have surgery hopefully soon on them. So. We'll
Yikes.
see. I know I have to go back in.
Will you be doing that over here or overseas?
I'll be doing that here. So.
I don't see anything.
What? In my eyes?
No comments.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't see anything either. I think we got everybody's comments. And I have to get ready because I have a ritual to do at 10.
Well, let's close it up for the night.
All right.
All right.
Y'all be
Frank.
sure to subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Frank, it sounds like your class is going to be amazing.
I look forward to it. It will be amazing. And I'm excited. I'm grateful that, you're part of the Collegium. And I'm excited for what you're teaching as well. Because it's definitely a very forgotten thing.
Yes.
It really is.
I'm through with them.
All right. Let me know that movie when you find it. I'm sure you're going to buy it. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.